Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and when hand sewing, it's nice that we have all of the supplies that we need, well, handy, regardless if we're going from room to room or we need to travel with it. And making little containers to do just that is a lot of fun. And this does happen to be a free pattern. The free pattern is from Connecting Threads, and this particular pattern does make 2 of these, plus 2 of the little needle books. But today I will only be making 1. Throughout the pattern we will be using 1/8 seam allowance. Now you can always change it to a 1/4 inch, it's just going to make it a little bit smaller. There's only one seam that's going to be a 1/4 inch, and that's our very first seam. The first thing we're going to make is the outside of that bag. This does have some pattern pieces. The very last page you'll need to copy that twice, because we do need 4 of these pie shapes. We're going to tape them together and we're going to get this half circle shape. And that's what that shape is going to look like. We have A, B, B, and another A1, but that A1 is on the back. We do need a 1/4 inch seam allowance on that very first seam, and that's why the pattern is reversed. And that way that 1/4 inch matches up. So to make this piece, we need that pattern piece put together. We have 2 fabrics that are right side together. We're going to cut that shape out. The next thing we're going to do is do a row of stitching. We're going to stitch a little bit on one side, leave this piece open, stitch all the way down, leave a piece open, and stitch. This little piece is going to be a casing where we're going to be able to draw that bag in. I do have my pins that's marking that area that I'm going to leave open. So I can stitch, skip over, stitch, skip over, and stitch. Once that seam is done, I'm going to take it and press it open. And that's going to give us 2 holes on each end. This pieced circle is the bottom or the outside of the bag. We now need to do the inside. So we can get a second piece of fabric, and you can cut a circle and match it, or just put the fabrics together and stitch around using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. I find it's easier to stitch while it's a square, and then I'll cut it down later. So I've stitched all the way around. Now I can trim off all of this extra. You can use a pair of shears. I like to use pinking shears. It just makes those edges nice and soft, because this needs to be turned right side out. We need to turn this right side out, and those little holes are not going to be big enough. So we can cut a little slit in the back. So just get to the center. Make sure your fabric is separated. Cut a little snip, and we're going to be able to turn that circle from that hole. If you want, you could always leave a little piece open here and hand stitch it, but this opening is going to be closed after, so you won't see it. It'll save you some time. Once we've turned it right side out, give it a press, and then we're going to do 2 rows of stitching all the way around. Those 2 rows of stitching are going to go around where that opening is. So we have that opening, and we need to stitch on one side of it and on the other. So this first measurement should be 1 inch, and the second measurement is 1 3/4 inches, because this opening is 3/4 of an inch. So we have those 2 rows of stitching all the way around. This will be the outside of the bag, and this is the inside, so this is going to get covered up. The next thing we're going to make is another circle, and it's going to be for our tools and our thread. And that is going to be made from circle number C. So you can print out 2 of these, because we are going to need that shape. And that is a 10-inch circle. So what I've done is I have just traced it right on that fabric. So I'm going to use that line as a guide for my foot, and I'm going to stitch an 1/8 inch all the way around using that line as a guide. Now this is going to be turned into pockets. It's going to have scissors and other little things in it. So I do want to put a little piece of ribbon, and that's not in the pattern. That's going to hold my pair of scissors so I don't lose them. So I'm going to take a little piece of ribbon, and to find that seam, just put a pin where you drew that line, fold that in half, and you can use that pin as a guide. I'm going to put it there and then transfer that pin so that ribbon is in between those fabrics. I'm going to make sure I'm not going to stitch that ribbon, that it stays inside and not in the seam allowance. I now can cut out my circle. I will need to turn this circle right side out by putting a little hole in the back, just like we did this piece. I'm going to have that dark piece facing up, so I'm going to put the hole in that light piece. Separate those two fabrics, put a little cut in the center, and turn that right side out. When the circle is turned right side out and pressed, I do have that little loop that I put there. And that is going to be able to hold my scissors when I need it. The next thing we need to do is mark some little areas on that piece so that we're going to be able to put in our scissors and our thread. And that's what those lines are for. The lines are going to be for scissors, and they're going to hold some small spools of thread. Now, if you like using larger spools of thread, then you will need to leave a larger space. I do like to use the small spools of thread from Mettler, so they will fit in those areas. So I do want to have one of those large sections right where my ribbon is, so my scissors can go in that pocket. And to mark this, we can just fold that in half, press it, fold it again, press it one more time, and then just fold that over just to make a little area. So I'll have 8 pockets. If you'd like, you can use those exact measurements, but by ironing that, it's giving me those marks. Now I'm going to be able to take this, put it in the center, and stitch right on those fold lines. Back stitch, come all the way down and back stitch again. So you're going to back stitch all of these pie shapes. You can always pin this before you stitch it to make sure that your thread is going to fit inside. If not, this is the time to make that adjustment. So I'm just going to stitch this right on here all together. And you can see where those 2 holes are not going to matter at all. Now that our pockets are all done, give it a nice press and we can go on to the pincushion. The pincushion pattern is circle number D. Now this inside circle is supposed to be something hard, like a hard plastic. It's going to be the base of that pincushion. I couldn't find a hard plastic, but I do have a canning lid, and well, it's close enough. So I need to cut out that circle, and this is going to fit underneath to give it that dome shape. I'm using 2 strands of a very strong thread, and I'm just going to baste all the way around. Before I tighten this up into that little ball, I am going to put some quilt batting. So that's going to go inside, and then I'm going to put that lid right there and just pull this and just tuck that batting in underneath that lid. And just pull that. Tie a knot. Once that little knot is done, I'm going to just do a couple of stitches. So I'm going to take one side, stitch it to the other, sort of just do a star shape, and that's just going to help hold it together. Once my little pincushion is all stitched together, I'm going to be able to hand stitch it right into the center. So I'll just do a little whip stitch all the way around just to anchor that on. That pin cushion is on, and because there's something hard inside, that pin is not going to go through to the other side. We now get to put some ribbon or some rope around that casing that we made. So we have those 2 holes on that back. And we will need about 2.5 yards of ribbon. What we're going to need is to go all the way around one time, and then it's going to go around a second time. You'll see in the diagram how that's going to be done. So let's get our first row done. So I'm going to go in that 1 hole, and I'm going to feed it all the way around, bypass that second hole, and I'm going to come out of that first hole. So we have that 1 all the way around, tie it off. Now we're going to repeat with this second hole. Start, go all the way around, bypass this, and come out the other side. Once those little ribbons are put inside, well, the bag is now done. We're going to be able to pull those ribbons, and this is going to come up into a little bag. So we have room for our pins. We can put the scissors there so they don't drop off while we're traveling them. Just put that loop right through one of the handles and then slip it around, and it's going to be there so we can put it right inside. All the different threads that we're going to need. And that free pattern does come with a little needle book. So we're going to keep those needles right inside. Just put your hand inside those loops and pull. Everything is safe inside. You can see where it really ties up nice and tight. Put your fingers in between and just pull that out. Now you don't need it totally flat. I like to have it a little bit of a bowl shape, and that way everything stays inside. So I can have it sitting on the couch beside me, or I can travel with it. And I'm ready to go. Just think of all the fun fabric that we can turn into pincushion bags. And there's lots of room for some little projects. And it's safe and sound. So this flat circle that turns into a bag is great just for all of that traveling. And there's enough room in there to put a lot of supplies if we need them. And having that built-in pincushion definitely is an added bonus. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I do have a newsletter, all under Sew Very Easy. I'll put a link in the description. Bye for now.